Hello and welcome to this HR chat. Today's session is Managing Your Remote Workforce. And with us today is Cheryl Chester, HR consultant specializing in organizational effectiveness, and Leesa Schipani, partner at KardasLarson, specializing in helping organizations move gracefully through change. Welcome.
While many organizations pre-pandemic had instituted work from home policies for some employees, others were still wrestling with this new work arrangement, some feeling that they were losing control of their workers' performance. Many now understand that working from home is the new normal. In fact, a recent Gartner survey found that 74% of companies have already reported they intend to make the shift to remote work, for some employees a permanent one. Employees echo this approach, with 53% seeking greater work-life integration and as many as 63% of millennials saying that they would change jobs for better integration. So today we will focus on how to manage this shift to the new normal. We are going to look at three different areas during this session. One is, what are the benefits and challenges of managing remote workers? Benefits and challenges not only to the organization, but certainly to those of you who are managing, and as well as to the entire workforce. Second, what are the core skills that are required to effectively manage a remote workforce? What we're finding is that the core skills aren't necessarily different. The application of these skills has changed considerably, especially with technology. And last, what are the best practices that organizations are discovering for managing a remote team? So let's begin by acknowledging the organizational benefits and challenges to working remotely.
Thank you, Cheryl. So if we take a look at these benefits, the first one being 8 hours of increased productivity per week. When you think about it, without the need to commute or the daily interruptions at the office, employees are truly enjoying higher productivity, which means they may finish up projects faster. And as a manager, who wouldn't love that? Then there's the organizational benefit of a reduction in office space expense. Organizations everywhere are reevaluating their office space needs, and growing organizations are finding that remote work really, in many cases, prevents them from incurring additional expense to create additional office space. Absenteeism is another area where there is a reduction. This is driven in part by employees able to better integrate their work and life, and they can actually continue to contribute when they do have a cold and you don't want them in the office spreading germs. Then there's a 10% reduction in voluntary turnover. Remote work definitely helps to retain your workforce, and as Cheryl mentioned, particularly millennials who will accept a reduced compensation for a remote work opportunity. On the flip side, there are definitely some challenges. For employees, often employees are motivated by feeding off their colleagues, and working remotely can be a little bit isolating. Employees need to be very intentional in terms of creating opportunities to connect with teammates, to lower that feeling of isolation and still be able to bounce ideas off of them. Also, because remote employees are out of the traditional office setting, some employees might feel that they are stagnant or missing out on learning and development experiences. Again, you really want to be intentional and plan for these experiences. So having employees think about how can they get these learning and development experiences and putting together a plan to keep learning. For managers, I often hear, how can I be sure they're actually working? Or how can I track how much time they've actually worked? While there's always a concern around this, the best thing to think about is how can you set clear expectations and deliverables that will ensure your remote team is meeting goals? And Cheryl will talk more about this. And managers might think about focusing on the results achieved rather than how much time goes into it and how can I track it. There are certainly some metrics that you will still want to track. When you think about building trust, one of the best things that you can do is not micromanage, but again, stay focused on the results. And then keeping the team engaged is very critical. And thinking about how you can use technology, instant messaging, taking time to celebrate everything, um, having core meeting hours, just like you would in the office, and most importantly, soliciting feedback from your team members to solve problems. You'll want to continue with your performance coaching and feedback. Just because the employees are remote doesn't mean your core practices go away. They're simply accomplished in a different manner. Cheryl's going to talk to us now about some best practices and the core skills that managers need to effectively manage their remote teams.
Thank you, Leesa. So as I said earlier, many of these skills are not new ones. They're ones that you as managers understand the need to continue to develop effectively. However, many of them play out differently. So for example, effective communication. We've heard for years that listening is a critical piece of effective communication. This becomes even more critical when you're remote. So being able to augment the listening with video, with Zoom meetings, so that you're seeing people as well as speaking with them. Doing frequent meetings and messaging is critical because people are not near you. So it's not like you can holler over the cubicle wall, don't forget, we have a meeting at 3:30. So being able to post ongoing communication is really important. The last best practice is around mini surveys. This simply means keeping a pulse on your employees who are working remotely. Simply checking in with them to see how they're doing, what they're doing. Do they need more information? Do they need more clarity? Do they need more resources? It's really important that that's a continuous part of your practice as a manager. Second skill is impactful collaboration. Now, much of this, as Leesa said, can certainly be supported by technology. We're also learning that more and more part of the isolation that employees feel is less obvious when they are being encouraged to have a voice. So soliciting information from them, how would you approach this? What do you think we should do next? And really allowing them a more collaborative partnership with you. Another important part is becoming even more important remotely is self-development. There's a great deal of emphasis now on self-development, self-directed development, where employees are meeting with their managers, speaking with them about their development needs, and then going off and identifying some ways to best meet those needs. Project management is critical because role clarity is critical, not only in a project, but in any performance goal that you're giving an employee. So what is the expectation for each team member? And then what is the structure for this team, which can easily then be reviewed and updated electronically? Meeting management takes on a pretty new dynamic. So the meeting agenda being established ahead of a meeting is critical so that people can get prepared and know what their roles are. If you want John to speak about Project A, make sure John knows that prior to the meeting and is prepared to do so. And also follow up from the meeting so that electronically, so that each individual knows what is expected going forward. So let's now look at some key takeaways. One of those takeaways is acknowledging that each of us experiences life about 30% rationally and about 70% emotionally. Now you can say, so what? The so what is if we as managers and as organizations ignore the emotional piece, which is so large, we are in fact limiting the impact of your employees' performance and their engagement. Many employees are reporting today that the critical leadership behaviors for them in working remotely, number one, Leesa mentioned earlier, trust, feeling that managers have employees' backs, that they're transparent, and that they are continuously involved. Secondly, support. Employees need to feel that they're getting ongoing coaching and development and that they are getting reinforcement for their own development needs. And the last one is having a manager who is consistent. This is not a time for erratic manager behavior, quick shifts. Let's do this. No, I changed my mind. That has a way of eroding trust and confidence in the manager. So reinforcing clear, continuous communication and messaging. Overall, I think the message is very clear that the newest incentive for many of your employees will be work-life integration. Leesa? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's look at the content of this session from which we drew our information. We've made it available on the slides so that if you would like to do further research, you certainly can. And now Leesa will conclude with a review of other KL resources available to you.
Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you to everyone for joining us on this webinar today. Please take a moment to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and take a look at our website as well as our YouTube channel for additional resources. We have a number of real-time, just-in-time resources that will help you continue to grow your business and maximize your performance. Thank you again.